So we're on verse number 7, right? Where Langri Tangpa says, in brief, both directly and indirectly do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers. I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and sufferings. So this is like a summary of all the verses that we have seen so far, which have been on the method side of the path: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort. And he says, directly and indirectly do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers. So, one point is that we don't let our practice just be on, an imaginary level, sitting on our cushion or reading books or reciting mantras, but that when we have the opportunities in our daily life, then to engage directly, giving benefit to others, helping others where we can. Maybe as Buddhists, sometimes we tend to be quite passive. I heard that Buddhists have the reputation of being passive people. And, there might be a reason for this because the world is quite afflicted and often polarized in, very polarized, in different views and different camps where you cannot see each other's side. So instead of sort of getting involved and taking one side and being, hateful to the other side, it's, sometimes it's just easier to distance yourself and let go, like not to get implicated. And then instead just strive for enlightenment and way to engage in the world until we have achieved the perfect state of Buddhahood, where we can see with omniscience, how everything is, uh, connected together, and how we can actually engage in the world perfectly without making mistakes. So this kind of view can make us very passive as Buddhists, as Dharma practitioners. And it makes sense, if we feel not strong enough to engage, it makes sense to take some distance. But if we do find that we have some, enough strength of mind, enough skill and so on, then it's also good, to combine our more contemplative practices with engaging in the world, going for demonstrations, doing activism, doing social work, all those things which I don't do. But sometimes opportunities come to go for a climate march or So when we see that we have the opportunity to engage directly to help others, then we should do so. And indirectly, it's dedicating our virtues activities of studying, contemplating, and meditating, reciting mantras, and so on, dedicating that energy towards others, so that we are preparing ourselves also in solitude, where we have transformed ourselves inside, so that we can give this to the world outside when we do meet people. This is also very important, to have a balance between the contemplative side and sort of the engagement side. If we only are active and engage with the world without having transformed our mind, chances are that we will create more problems than solutions This often also happens. And if we, on the other hand, is just are just passive and watch the world sort of destroying itself under the power of afflictions, then we're not really fulfilling our, let's say, our bodhisattva aspirations either. So it's, striking a balance between these two. You may know and in philosophy, I think in Western philosophy, it's been sort of always a battle between these two. Like Karl Marx said something like, well, philosophy has engaged itself in understanding the world, but our mission is to change it. That's what Karl Marx said, right? So, but he was trying to change the world based on very, I think, deluded conceptions, which then, without taking many important aspects of human psychology into account. And the result of that was, Soviet Union, uh, communist China, genocide in Cambodia, and blah 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 and blah blah blah, because you're trying to change the world without understanding it. Opposite of that is trying to understand the world without changing it, and just doing theoretical philosophy and science and not giving a damn about what happens to the world. And so striking a balance between these two are important, and I think this is a little bit what this verse is talking about. And then it explains how to train our mind to develop this conventional bodhicitta, so we can engage with the world with conventional bodhicitta. So as you know, there are two methods in Tibetan Buddhism for cultivating the conventional bodhicitta, to wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And those are the sevenfold cause and effect, and equalizing and exchanging self with others. So have all of you heard, do all of you know about the sevenfold cause and effect method? Yeah, you've heard about it, studied it a bit. Do I see heads nodding? Yeah, good. So the second one then, which is very much in the Lojong tradition, that's the taking and giving. This is sort of the secret method which the Kadampa masters would not reveal to childish beings, because it would make us too afraid to want to engage in it. So when we do this formally in meditation, equalizing and exchanging self with others, it has a few steps of doing it. It's not just jumping to the mind which starts to breathe in all the headaches and back pains and the hunger and thirst and the hell realm suffering and so on of all sentient beings and ourselves, and breathing out all our happiness. Because many times we will feel that's quite, might be quite superficial. We're not doing it really sincerely. So it has a few steps of doing this meditation. So first of all, it begins with equalizing self with others. Then we go on and contemplate the drawbacks of the self-cherishing mind or the self-preoccupied mind. We continue with contemplating the benefits of cherishing others. And then we do the exchanging self with others, and the meditation of taking and giving, which then leads to bodhicitta when we do it sort of sincerely enough and universal enough. So in the first step of equalizing self with others, it's it's different from equanimity, which is the first step in the other method, or which is a prerequisite for the sevenfold cause and effect. So in equanimity, we have sort of equalized friends, enemies, and strangers, seeing that there's no reason for us to being attached to some and averse to others and so on. But here we are sort of touching a more sensitive point, even more sensitive point. We are starting to see there is actually no difference between myself and others. So and we do feel like that, right? Like in our heart, we feel that my happiness and my suffering are more important, more relevant than everybody else. What happens to me, we make sort of it's a big deal, whereas what happens to others is less of a big deal. If others are stuck in war zones, etc., etc., they're suffering in different ways. It's there's you make a sad face, you say some sad, words of condolences, but inside in the heart, not so much is happening in terms of compassion and love. You might think, or might say, yes, this is samsara, this is their karma, it's too bad, and so on. Whereas when it happens to me, then it becomes like a big deal, big drama, and you forget about karma, and you forget about samsara and so on. And I'm not saying this, for us to have to feel. It's not for us to feel guilty that we are not compassionate enough, not loving enough, that we are judging ourselves more than others, and so on. But somehow, seeing that we have this tendency or this inclination in our heart to this kind of preference for ourselves, and the feeling that we are more important than others, that we feel entitled to happiness, whereas others are less so. I feel entitled, let's say, to live in Europe with all its commodities, its safety, and so on. And whereas the people that are trying to cross the Mediterranean, too bad they were born in another country, but they're equally, everybody else are equally deserving happiness, just like I do. So we all equally deserve happiness and to be free from suffering. And in this meditation, we are trying to start to feel that, but actually others' happiness are more important than my own. So we can, in the meditation, we can visualize ourself to one side, our usual self to one side, and then to our other side, we can, try to visualize all other sentient beings. So we can see our mother, our father, and other dear ones there, and everybody else. and we start to sort of see their and we contemplate their sufferings, which we should already be habituated to by contemplating the middling scope. And we start to feel that, yes, just as my own suffering is unbearable to me, their suffering is unbearable to them. And I'm just one, and they are countless. So who is more important? And so naturally we should come sort of to the conclusion, oh, they are more important than me. But
can I say something?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello,
It sounds so advanced, the words that you are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when Langri Rinpoche was here, and I remember it clearly. He said, it's not that others suffering, it's not that my suffering is not important. It is important, but others too. And that's, I can understand, or I can start, to work with it. But you say other suffering is even more important than yours. And when you say, and I hear when you say yours, it's my kids, right? It's my close family. It's all the people that I consider myself. It's so advanced. I mean, I don't know how you can do it.
Yes, it is very advanced.
I don't know how I can do it. I'm sorry.
It is very advanced. It's the training of a great being, the highest scope. So somebody like me, these are just, you're presenting the Bodhisattva attitude and the Bodhisattva path and how to generate that mind. It doesn't mean that it's, something which is accessible for somebody like me right now, but it's a training and something which, if you have admiration for the Mahayana path, that you're aspiring to develop. And we should remember that, as we are talking about Lojong text and how to develop the two bodhicittas, but these, these are sort of the top of the mountain, the summit, and we have not talked so much about the actual, the mountain, going up there, the lower scope and the middling scope, which are prerequisites for this mind. Yeah. So this is for somebody who's already given up attachment to this life, given up attachment to samsara, have the strength to strive for liberation, but is sort of starting to become aware that I cannot strive for my own liberation alone, not alone. I have to take into consideration everybody else. And as we will see in this practice, it's not, yes, you develop this kind of attitude, others suffering because are more important than yours, because you want to abandon the self-cherishing attitude, and because you see that others are countless and you are just one, right? So if I have to sacrifice myself for the sake of countless others, including my parents, including my children, including my husband or wife, sister, brother, and so on, then it's an intellectual, at least, we see that this is decent. This is okay thing to do. But not only that, by developing this attitude, you are actually creating the causes for happiness for yourself as well as for others. So this is something we need to keep in mind. So once we have equalized, starting to feel that this kind of equality between self and others, that for sure my happiness, my suffering, my fate, whatever happens to me in this cyclic existence is of no more importance than what happens to other sentient beings, including the ants, the mosquitoes, and everybody, everybody else. Then you go on to the next step and contemplate the disadvantages of cherishing yourself more than others. So this self-cherishing mind, it comes with levels. There's obviously different levels to the self-cherishing mind. So on a course level, it's the mind which is putting more emphasis on yourself than others and putting emphasis on this life. So it's about your happiness in this life, here, right now. And even this comes with levels, right? Some people, complete psychopaths. They don't, they do live out whatever, afflicted thought, afflicted fantasy they have in order to get pleasure for themselves here and right now. So we all know, we have all seen examples of this in the world, heard about examples of this. So this is an extremely self-cherishing mind, right? Then there is, of course, less coarse self-cherishing minds, which is, yes, thinking about me, myself, and I, my career, and whatever, and I don't give a damn about actually my family either, and so on. But yes, I would never go so far as I would maybe kill somebody, rape somebody, and so on. But it's still very, very self-focused. So, and you have lesser and lesser degrees of this kind of self-cherishing, which is about me, myself, and this life. Sometimes we might, we extend to, of course, if we're decent people, we'll extend to our family, to friends, and so on. And we will not be completely, psychos, complete narcissists, let's say, not psychos, but narcissists. So we know there are levels of this. On a less coarse level, we have the mind which is putting more emphasis on future lives than on this life. But still, the sort of the focus of our activities and of our concerns, of our wishes, of our aspirations, dedications, and so on, is still for ourselves, but in future lives. We have recognized that this life is very short, that happinesses, joys in this life is very limited, and so we are much more interested in, the divine pleasures of future lives. For that reason, because we're clever, we will engage in ethics, keeping our ethics pure, practicing generosity, being patient with the difficulties we meet, doing our commitments, our practices, paying respect to people, sangha, to teachers, to other people in general. But still in our heart, there's this self-focus. We are more important than others, and our pleasures are more important, than the happiness of others, the genuine happiness of others. Our pleasures are even more important than our own lasting happiness. So on the third level of self-cherishing, which is called the subtle self-cherishing, it's when we feel that our lasting happiness is more important than our temporal pleasures. So it's a aspiration, a self-cherishing aspiration, which is based on deep insight, deep contemplation and meditation practice, where we really feel that, whether it's a low rebirth or high rebirth, both are suffering in nature, and we feel nauseated with the entirety of cyclic existence. It's compared to somebody who, when you're really full, when you're sick and you feel nauseated, even if somebody serves you a delicious hummus, you will not feel attracted to it, and much less if somebody serves you caca. Both are equally disgusting. You don't want any of them. And this is when we really have renunciation, but the emphasis is still on yourself more than others. And you can have what's called the immeasurable loving kindness and compassion, equanimity, and emphatic joy. And you really, really are radiating goodness towards others, taking care of others. You might be teaching, you might be giving vows, ordinations. You're doing everything very good for others. But still the aspiration is, for your own peace. And this is the subtle self-cherishing mind. Now, for somebody training on the Hinayana path, this is not an object of abandonment, and it's not an obscuration. It's a sort of an okay mind. But for somebody who wants to enter the Mahayana path, this is an obscuration. It's called the obscuration of the lesser. Among the, four types of obscurations that exist, the afflictive obscurations, the cognitive obscurations, the obscurations towards meditative stabilization, and then you have these obscurations towards the lesser. So it's not a genuine obscuration because it's not necessarily an object of abandonment, but for a Mahayanist, it is something to be abandoned and to be avoided. So, okay, we have 5 minutes before you go for discussion. So one point of discussion I suggest is to contemplate and discuss what is the difference between self-cherishing and self-care. Because when we are trying to abandon self-cherishing, we might think that, oh, means I cannot take care of myself, at all. I cannot even eat or go for, do some exercise, have some fun in life, and so on. And I think this is not the case. We have to make a difference between a valid self-care and self-cherishing. So please, you can discuss this. And you can also discuss what are the drawbacks of the self-cherishing mind and the advantages of the cherishing others. And you can discuss it in relation to these three these three levels of self-cherishing that I mentioned. One which is focused only on this life, one which is focused on future lives, and one which is focused on your own liberation. What are the disadvantages of these self-cherishing minds? And what are the benefits of cherishing others? Again, the benefits that we can see in this life, the benefits that we can see in future lives, and the benefits, let's say, for the Mahayana aspiration. Okay, so maybe then I let you go into discussion now, so it's better that you discuss among yourself than I start make my blah blah. Okay, so I see you in 40 minutes, so 12 o'clock in your time, right? 11 o'clock here. So the point is to change the focus of our cherishing mind, who we regard as important. So when we start to feel that the happiness of others and the suffering of others is really important, and we can feel it emotionally, then and we feel that our own suffering and happiness is sort of secondary to that. It shows that we have changed the focus of our cherishing mind, and we are ready to do the practice of taking and giving. So there's various sort of visualizations you can do with this taking and giving meditation. You can be creative and see what works for you. But usually you would visualize your self-cherishing mind and your heart as some kind of dark energy or hard rock or something like that. The other day when I led a meditation on this, I visualized my heart as being a closed lotus covered by mud, dried, thick mud. So the mud, of course, is all my obscurations. That's why it's dry and thick. And the lotus is more about, my inner potential. In this closed lotus, I think about, the clear light mind of so like a bulb of light, warm, very pleasant light. And then, at the suggestion of Geshe Shikawa in the 7-point mind training, he says, when we do the taking and giving practice, we start with ourselves. So, to gradually increase our capacity. So it's a bit like, this story about the Buddha when he was teaching generosity to an extremely miserly person. He didn't say to this person, you should give and you should, go out and give to charities and so on. But he said, take something that you hold dear and give it from your right hand to your left hand. And then you give it from your left hand to your right hand, like this. And he gradually became accustomed to giving to himself. After that, he could start to give, maybe to some close family member, and etc. and etc. until you can give very widely. So it's the same idea here. So you can begin visualizing, one can begin visualizing oneself sometime in the future in this life. We can think about ourselves, for example, in old age. We have gray hair, we have wrinkles, we have crooked back, we have difficulties walking, we cannot eat by ourselves anymore, we cannot go to the toilet by ourselves anymore. Just, bending down and tying our shoelaces as a big feat, big chore. So we imagine ourselves sometime in the future and being very helpless, powerless, and suffering. And we start then to take the suffering of our future self upon ourselves here and right now. And we can visualize that as a black light or some black dark energy. Going from our future self, absorbing into us, through our crown or through our mouth or through our nose, preferably I think through our nose on our breathing. We're taking it on our breathing, and that energy is then traveling down to our lotus heart, and it's starting to grind a little bit upon this mud of our heart. And when we breathe out, we give our present energy, our present happiness, our present abilities of seeing, hearing, walking, eating, and so on, unobstructed, without any difficulty, and we give that to our future selves. We give our friends and helpers to our future self. We give our joy, our entertainment, our clarity of mind, whatever we have, to our future self. And we do that meditation for a while. Okay? And gradually the mud is, little by little, let's say atom by atom, it's wearing off. Then you can visualize yourself in a future lifetime, and you can visualize, yourself as not having resources, not having a beautiful appearance, intelligence, not having the freedoms and so on that you presently have, but being in difficult situations. As a refugee, stuck in a war zone, as being whatever difficult situations which you find are relatable, and you can visualize yourself being in those difficulties in a future life. And you take those difficulties and the causes of those difficulties upon yourself here and right now, and you give your happiness. And the dirt on this lotus in your heart wears off a little bit more. But still, you cannot see the petals yet. There's still a lot of mud there. And I think, one point of doing this meditation, of course, is that we avoid creating the causes for suffering in the future because of being so attached to pleasures in the present that we are willing to do whatever in order to get those pleasures, and that also that we are neglecting Dharma practice for the sake of just comfort here and now. That's the point. Thinking of ourselves and considering our welfare in the future and taking a longer view. So after we have considered ourself and been taking and giving with regard to ourselves, we can think about somebody we hold very dear in this life. And again, we think about this person in a suffering situation, being old, being sick, being helpless, being depressed, so on. And we've tried to feel how unbearable this is. We take their suffering upon ourselves and their causes of suffering happily, with delight, freeing them, and then we give our happiness and our causes of happiness to them on our out breath in the form of some light. And mud wears off more and more, and we can begin to see, let's say we begin to see the petals of the lotus, and we think they are established in happiness and that we have taken their suffering upon ourselves. And if you want, you can do that with 1, 2, 3 dear ones, or just one if if our capacity is a bit limited, because we want to continue and then think about a stranger, a neutral person, and we contemplate their suffering for a while, or we imagine them in a suffering situation, and again we take their suffering upon ourselves in the form of a dark light. It comes and starts to grind the mud of our lotus heart, and we give our happiness and the causes of our happiness. And now, lots of the dirt of the lotus have worn off, and the petals are starting to open, and we see this, the warm, very pleasant light in our heart. And this is emanating to the neutral person, fulfilling their wishes, establishing them in happiness, freeing them from suffering. Then we can think about the troublemaker or somebody we feel aversion to sometimes. And again, we imagine they're suffering, all the afflictions which are motivating them, the negative karmas which are obscuring their mind, their old age, their sickness, their death, and so on. And we take upon that on ourselves, and we give our happiness. And here, the lotus is really starting to open. More and more petals are opening up, and this warm light becomes very apparent, and it's emanating to the troublemaker, fulfilling all their wishes. And by the way, it's also nourishing ourself, making ourself very peaceful and happy. Now, if we have and one point about doing this Tonglen meditation is not pushing ourselves. Like, we're breathing naturally, and we're not straining our mind, we're not pushing our mind, we're not squeezing, but it's happening like very naturally, okay? And it's on an imaginary level, but we try to do it sincerely. Some people, when they do this meditation, they squeeze and then they come out with a heavy headache, or and they think it's a good sign, but that's not necessarily a good sign, because that you're suffering after this meditation. That's not the point. Sometimes they also say that we can feel scared during this meditation, and that this is actually a good sign. So if we feel some anxiety, some fear, actually we feel resistance of taking the suffering of others, this is a good sign. His Holiness said it's a sign that the self-cherishing mind is a little bit losing its grip on our subtle mind. Then we can expand to more and more loved ones, more people in our vicinity. We can think about the people, our neighbors, and we can think of and taking their suffering upon ourselves, giving our happiness. Think about the people in our town and in our city. Then we can go to our country, to the neighboring countries, to the continent, to our world, and then we can go through each realm of existence as well, and taking the particular characteristic suffering of that realm and the causes upon ourselves. So when we are doing this meditation, let's say slowly and carefully, it can take quite a long time. So, and we don't have to do everything at once. We do whatever we feel the capacity to do it, and then gradually expand. But once we have been doing this meditation with regard to all sentient beings in the different realms, then this has hopefully created in us the great compassion and the special intention, that we know from the sevenfold cause and effect, that not only do you find the suffering of others unbearable, but you have a willingness also to work for their welfare and eradicate their causes of suffering. And from there on, it's not far to bodhicitta, I think. Do you have any questions? Any comments? No? Okay. So now this meditation, like somebody like me, the lowest level of so-called practitioner, it's very intellectual and it's very much up here. But with the practice, it changes our attitude, and maybe we see a little bit change in our, day-to-day interaction as well. But the real point is to develop genuine bodhicitta, the feeling of bodhicitta in our heart. And this mind, which I've never experienced, but they say, those who seem to have experience of this mind, the great practitioners, when they talk about it, you see that there's something forceful there, something very joyful there. When they speak about bodhicitta, there's bliss in their eyes, there's strength in their energy. So I just read a book from Robert Priest, maybe you know him. He's a psychotherapist and long practicing Buddhist, and he was feeling also all of this practice. It's very intellectual, and he asked himself, but what does bodhicitta actually feel like? So he says that once when he was in Bodh Gaya, he went to a great Lama, Tara Tulku, and he asked him, in a one-to-one interview or conversation, he said, yeah, but what does bodhicitta actually feel like? And this Rinpoche, this Lama, opened his eyes very wide, he said, and just stared him into the eyes. And at that point, Robert Priest felt in his heart, he says, a surge of blissful energy for a few minutes, like a very powerful experience. And strong loving kindness and strong compassion. So something like that we are aspiring to feel in ourselves. And I think this mind then gives us a lot of positive energy, joyous effort, a lot of courage to engage with others and to traverse obstacles, and lots and lots of bliss and joy. So it's really not, as you can see, the point of the meditation is not to make ourselves happy. Rather, this is the method, the skillful method for creating causes of happiness for ourselves as well as others. Whereas the self-cherishing attitude is just giving rise to problem after problem, imperfection after imperfection. This is how Tsongkhapa also advises us to think that when we think about the disadvantages of the self-cherishing attitude, that since beginningless time, he says, we have tried to make everything perfect for ourselves. Having the perfect body, the perfect house, the perfect husband or wife, the perfect children, the perfect education, perfect job, being the perfect monk, being the holiest of all the monks, being the perfect yogi, being the most ascetic one, outshining Milarepa, and everything we try to be perfect for ourselves. And he says, but we have relied on the wrong method, and so nothing good has really come about with this attitude, like nothing long-lasting good, nothing stable. And instead, because of this self-cherishing attitude, we have suffered a lot in samsara, and when it's become very unskillful, we have acted recklessly and harmed others. And if instead we would have transformed our attitude of cherishing self and cherishing others, then by now we would have attained Buddhahood already. So really to try in our life the best as we can to see that this is, the main goal in our life is to develop the altruistic mind of awakening, and this will make this life most worthwhile, and it will make future lives most worthwhile as well. Yeah. And then Geshe Langri Tangpa, he says, do this practice secretly. So we don't go around and tell others that we are practicing Tonglen for their sake, and we're taking all their problems from them, and that they should be very grateful to us for doing so. So it's really it's a secret practice. We don't tell anybody about it. It's only for us to know. Then should we go to the next verse, which is about finally, the ultimate bodhicitta. So so far we have seen the practices of conventional bodhicitta, and now we are seeing the wisdom realizing emptiness. And we know that we need this mind. We need to develop this mind because it's the only mind which can pacify the afflictions and eradicate the afflictions in our mind stream. If we have this mind, we can eradicate our own suffering, and we can also lead others to the same state by inducing wisdom in them. So he says, undefiled by the stains of the superstitions of the eight world concerns, may I, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. So undefiled by the stains of superstitions of eight world concerns. So keeping our practice, our Dharma practice pure, it needs to be unpolluted or undefiled by the eight world concerns. Can anybody tell me which are the eight world concerns?
Gain and loss.
Gain and loss.
Bad reputation. I guess good reputation.
Praise and when someone praises you, and then when they do the opposite, when they
criticize
you. Yes. And there's one more pair, which is it?
It's the most difficult one. The pleasure and pain.
Ah,
So we have the attachment or the craving for pleasure and the aversion for pain. Yeah? The craving for praise, aversion for criticism. Craving for good reputation or attachment to good reputation, aversion to bad reputation. And then wanting profit or gain, craving for it, and being upset, unhappy by loss. So this is basically, I think the motivating factors for ordinary beings, for non-Dharma practitioners. So for this, for the practices to be pure, they need to be undefiled by these minds. They are called superstitions. One way of interpreting them is that ordinary people think that by striving for the one and avoiding the others, they will attain lasting happiness. They will, they will attain what they really want in the hearts of hearts. But this is a superstition, not taking account of impermanence, not taking account of the karma and the drawbacks of the self-grasping mind and the self-searching mind. So it's really like superstitions of commonsensical people. Much like, people feel Buddhists are might be superstitious because we accept rebirth, or we accept, invisible entities like ghosts or beings in the bardo and so on. While Buddhists regard, these are very superstitious minds, the Eightfold Concerns. By craving for these, people usually get the opposite, unfortunately. But they don't see that. Now, by craving for praise, we tend to act in ways that we get criticism instead. People get really fed up with us, that we're always, fishing for their, approval, and instead, people criticize us for not being ourselves, for not being authentic, for making unsuitable jokes and whatever, jokes which were sort of aimed of, they think we're funny and whatever. So we get the right opposite of we didn't want. By wanting lots of gain and so on and getting greedy, yes, we might, if we do that in a skillful way with common sense, we might gain profit, of course. But in the long run, if that leads us to miserliness and it leads us to negative actions, then we get the opposite of poverty and all the problems of poverty. And also in this life, it gives us, this kind of greedy mind. It pushes us sometimes into very adventurous, say, projects, risky things, and we lose a lot of money and possessions and so on the stock market, or all sorts of frauds and so on. Wanting the good reputation again, fishing always for others' approval and so on, being very concerned about how others perceive us, prevents us from being ourselves, being authentic people, authentically virtuous people. And in the end, people don't really respect, don't really appreciate. We don't get the good reputation. We feel frustrated with others. We start to badmouth others, look at their faults and so on, so we can feel good instead. And in the end, we end up having a bad smell, bad reputation. And the pleasure and pain. Again, being just looking out, trying to crave and plan and design our life so that we can maximize pleasure for ourselves, we end up with so many secondary, hardships and problems. We, with a very self-cherishing attitude, we might go for the vacation and pay for the 5-star hotel, the suite, with a beautiful lover, and we think we're gonna have a blast of a time, wonderful time. But we get food poison in the hotel restaurant, and our lover is really irritating, and we get sunburn from being at the beach too much, and anyway, we don't know anybody in the city, and we get bored, and so on, because we're so craving just for our own pleasures. We experience so much pains instead of being relaxed, instead of being like, yeah, what comes, I don't need the best for myself. I try to just look out for the welfare of others, and good things come from that. And we experience less of our negative karmas, hopefully. So it's the worldly superstitious way of going about to have happiness and not to have suffering. Very unskillful, and yet it's really controlling our mind and in our daily life and in our interactions with others. While if we cherish others, and then we can be also very authentic. There's this, I think, feeling in cherishing others where we don't have anything to hide from others, and we're not trying to use others in any way. Also, we feel relaxed with others, happy when others are happy when we can give to others, and we can be ourselves as well. When we see problems, negativities, we can call that out. We can put our fingers on that, but not in the self-righteous way, which is sort of just, how do you say, puking out our criticism to those who we feel are unjust, or when we feel injustices, but also with the mind which is considerate for others. So we use enough force enough force and enough gentleness also, let's say, in our criticism of problems, in our engagement, in our activism, trying to change things, because we're not trying to harm Benjamin Netanyahu or anybody else. We want their happiness, but we also want the happiness of everybody else whom they are sort of neglecting and harming. And we can see that by harming, by being liars, by being corrupt, by being greedy and so on, they are also drawing unhappiness upon themselves. So with a very in an authentic way and with common sense, with honesty, with insight, and with dignity, we can, confront problems, and without much worry that, things will turn out bad for ourselves. Yes, of course, there will be people that are criticizing us because, you know, either because they're deluded and you know, corrupted. Okay, but that's their problem, right? We've already seen that in previous verses that's their problem, and we can offer the victory sometimes, and others time we just confront them, or because they're under the sway of misconceptions, and eventually, you know, truth will prevail because of the you know, the profundity of dependent arising. So we see that a lot of time, I think, with good people in the world. You know, it's a bumpy ride, and they often have to go through a lot of criticism and a lot of you know, slander and bad reputation and so on. But oftentimes they come out, you know, on the right side of things, on the right side of history. Even more so if they have borne these difficulties with dignity and goodness. We can think about people like Nelson Mandela, I think also Gandhi to a big degree. Also with His Holiness, you know, His Holiness, who for a long time was subject to all these smearing campaigns by the, what was it, you know, this new Kadampa tradition, which was sort of following him around when he was teaching in the West. And they were making these big protests outside the venues and shouting, you know, he should, His Holiness stop lying, His Holiness give religious freedom and so on. And they were making such a big thing, and of course confusing the minds of people who had not a deep devotion towards His Holiness. And in the end, you know, it turned out these people are funded by a communist Chinese regime. They're complete liars. That they are not presenting the reasons why His Holiness has distanced himself from this kind of practices and so on. In the end, and His Holiness takes everything. You could see, you know, the little I saw with a lot of peace, with a lot of sort of joy, no worry, and respecting them. At one point, I think in Oslo, he was saying, you know, when they were outside demonstrating, and he was saying from the balcony of his hotel, he said, "Well, I'm very much in favor," and they were screaming and screaming and screaming these slogans. And then he said that there was some media gathering there. He said, "I'm very much in favor of democracy." So they definitely have the freedom of speech and the freedom to express their opinions, and I take them as sort of a practice of my patience and my loving kindness. I'm very grateful towards them. You know, things like this, taking things lightly. So this is yes, please.
I don't want. Okay. I wonder if sometimes we do need not skillful actions, or even to act from ignorance, you know, whatever Buddhism call ignorance. Because again, I'm thinking about, you know, you mentioned Nelson Mandela or other, and I'm thinking about the situation, let's say in Israel, if people wouldn't do extreme actions, let's say like going and protesting nonstop and going to, you know, protesting in front of houses, or even being a little bit violent or really doing not skillful things, I think sometimes even I'm thinking about, you know, history, it will change. Sometimes you need a extreme. Sometimes to make change. You know what I mean? I mean, it's all really nice, and I agree with you with everything that you say, but you know, you have people that don't think like that. And I think if, let's say, if in Israel people won't be extreme, nothing will happen, nothing will change. So it's like, I wonder, you know, we need the very spiritual people, and you need maybe the extreme people, and to make history and to make I'm not sure that you can do it in a different way. I don't know.
Well, I think that's the suggestion of Buddhism, that first of all, it's not about not protesting and not putting up opposing harmful forces in the world. Yes, definitely do. First of all, oppose the negative forces in yourself, then oppose the negative forces in others. When you have opposed the negative forces in yourself, you can oppose the negative forces outside with a lot of authenticity, self-dignity, and strength, and without succumbing to negativity yourself. Now, the most extreme thing we can do in this world, if we consider human history, is the things which I think Nelson Mandela did, which Jesus Christ did, which Buddha did, and it is practicing altruism, kindness, compassion in the face of harmfulness. That's the most extreme thing we can do, the most unusual thing we can do. And according to Buddhism, I think it's the most skillful, generally speaking, it's the most skillful as well, because it is to this approach that we will definitely change the minds of other people. The rest, you know, acting with the answering the rage or injustice with injustice is this kind of, I think, based on, you know, the dualistic thinking, the dualistic approach, that somehow we can overcome our opponents by being stronger than them, by destroying them, by making them powerless. But as long as they are unhappy, as long as others are under the power of afflictions and so on, this drama, this kind of conflicts will just continue in new forms and new forms and new forms. So yes, oppose, oppose a lot, continuously, in the most extreme way, but do that with this kind of skillfulness of bodhicitta. This is the only way, I think, this is the only way to make the world actually peaceful. Yeah. And find, you know, trying to find ways of doing that with compassion and loving kindness and bodhicitta. How that manifests is another story, you know. I don't know every time how that will manifest, but I don't think it will manifest in the form of taking up weapons, in the form of beating up other people, in the form of insulting them in their face. I don't think so. Generally will not manifest in that way. Not even these actions of, you know, throwing paint, destroying works of art and so on. It will not manifest that way. I don't think it will manifest in violent actions. Yes, it might manifest in harsh speech, in criticism, in you know, signs of unkindness. But the motivation needs to be there of one of concern for others, for our opponents as well. And this is for our own sake as well, because we want to attain Buddhahood and not just continuously revolve in this cycle of existence. You think about it. This is how I've been brainwashed to think. But it seems reasonable to me. So finally, the last verse. Well, the last few sentences of the last verse, which is saying that perceiving all phenomena as illusory, so may I be released from the bondage of attachment. So, of course, we want to release our mind from attachment, craving, and grasping. Craving and grasping, as you might know or recall, that are the 7th and the 8th link of the 12 links of dependent origination. So they are what are activating contaminated karma at the time of our death, and thus leading to another rebirth. So we want to stop the attachment, this very ingrained attachment in our mind. And we cannot do so by practicing extreme asceticism, denying ourselves, depriving ourselves, flagellating ourselves, being sort of more powerful, trying to show us more powerful than our present body and mind. No, the release of attachment will come from understanding. First of all, understanding conventional aspects of reality, which to some the Buddha taught were ultimate aspects of reality. So understanding impermanence, suffering, and selflessness will release attachment in our mind stream, and we will feel more at peace. When we start to release attachment to possessions, to our body, to relationships, to country, to our reputation, to our pleasure, we will see for ourselves, without having to resort to scripture or spiritual authority, we will feel more happy and peace in ourselves. And this, again, does not mean that we don't care about our body, our health, our looks, our friends, having possessions and so on, but there's not this grasping mind in it. We can accept, yes, okay, so I'm a skinny person. Okay, that's okay. Doesn't make me worthless, doesn't make me ugly, even, not necessarily in my eyes. Okay, so I don't have lots and lots of possession. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to lead an unhappy life, etc., etc. These things are not essential to be a happy person. They are sort of useful things on a temporal level, and they sustain our life. But the really essential thing is developing our mind and the points of the path, especially the 3 principal aspects of the path, to learn those conceptually, and then to contemplate them and meditate on them and develop some experience of them. That's the real essential thing in life. If we want, if we want to take care of future lives, reach liberation, and eventually Buddhahood. So But in order to reduce attachment, we need to let go of this, our misconceptions about reality. So as I mentioned first, our misconceptions about conventional reality, and then the most, our misconceptions about the true reality, what is really true. So all of these conventional truths, and I mean, I'm talking from a pitch black state of ignorance. This is what I've read and thought about from the Buddhist text, but that these conventional truths of body, of self, of other people, of our country, and so on, these are falsities or truths for a concealer mind. In actuality, nothing exists as it appears to our ordinary unenlightened mind. This is the Buddhist view. From all of the philosophical schools, but especially then from the Madhyamika school, that we see reality as sort of fixed and objective and out there, and that our mind is not a participating agent in creating our reality. And this is totally wrong from the Buddhist point of view. Our mind is creating our reality. This is what karma is about also. Our karma is creating our reality. But even, if you have studied the tenets, the philosophical school of Buddhism, you will see Buddhist schools who say that, yes, karma is creating your reality, but, there's still an objective reality out there. Things are existing from their own side, and the mind is not creating them, really. But when we go higher up in the Mahayana tenets, there's more and more emphasis on how the mind is creating your reality. And we can take simple examples to see that as, how, countries don't exist from their own side, that borders are not really real. Yes, they're real on a conventional level because people agree upon them. They're not really real. This is just, a common sense, let's say, a common delusion. The same with money. We know that this paper is not worth more, because it says 500 on it. It's not more from its own side worth more than if it says 100, and it's not worth more than toilet paper or anything else really. But because of the common delusion, yes, this is how conventional reality works. We understand that things are food and so are not good from their own side. I like hummus, but not everybody do, and so on and so on. And these kind of contemplations can release our ignorance, which is grasping that things are existing from their own side. But even with more sort of concrete objects, we need to contemplate that these two are not existing from their own side, that our mind is playing an essential role in producing these objects, making them what they are. So if we check something as concrete and an object of attachment as our body, we will see when we contemplate that our body, if we feel that it's seems quite objective now, and I have a body, it's a human body, it's a male body, and then you start to analyze, it's where in the parts is this body. It's not in the individual parts, it's not in the collective parts, it's not something separate from the parts. This body is produced by non-body elements. In fact, it is full of things and it's void of one thing, which is the body. But it's full of lots and lots of other things. but it's void of that one thing, and an inherent body. So we speak about the designated object and the basis of designation, right? And the Madhyamika school, at least. So the body is the designated object. We designate body, and the object of designation are such things as the arms, the legs, the trunk, and the head. The body, the designated object, does not abide within the basis of designation, and it does not abide without it either, outside of it either. By contemplating this, we release grasping of an inherently existent body. It is our mind which is producing the appearance of a body. And then we go and analyze the individual parts, and we see the same things. The arm is not abiding within the flesh, within the bones, within the skin, within the nails of the fingers. The flesh is not abiding, like the muscles, is not abiding within the individual threads of muscles. And it's not abiding without them, outside of them either. It's not abiding within the calcium cells which make up the bones, and so on. And you go down then analyzing the cells, analyzing the atoms composing the cells, and so on. And we start to see that things are not as objective, as concrete, as they seem to our present mind. And we then release our grasping at inherent existence. Now, this is, lots of philosophical words, but it's said that when we do this type of analysis on the basis, and I know I'm going a little bit over time, I'm very sorry, but give me just a few more minutes, and then I wrap it up. When we do this analysis of non-findability, or looking for the inherent reality of the object we are analyzing, when we do this on the basis of calm abiding, this will really affect our mind deeply, and let go of deeper layers of grasping. And to the point where all conventional phenomena eventually disappear from, let's say, the sphere of our mental consciousness, and we will abide in a state of emptiness, where no conventional phenomena, not me, not you, no objects at all, actually appear. There is no appearance of inherent existence, true existence. The three dualistic conceptions of the conception of me and you, the conception of inherent existence, and conventional phenomena in general will not appear in this state, and you abide in this state of emptiness, this voidness, which is said to be a very blissful state. So it's not at all depressing in any way, and it's not a nihilistic emptiness, because this emptiness is based on conventional phenomena. It's just as for that mind realizing emptiness, the conventional phenomena don't appear. When you abide in that state of emptiness, you're really chipping away on the afflictions, the afflictive obscurations. And if you do it with bodhicitta, then you're chipping away on the cognitive obscurations as well, going on the highway towards Buddhahood, the path of meditation. Eventually, once you have traversed the path of seeing. And when you then return from meditative absorption on emptiness, you see conventional phenomena as being illusion-like, or being dream-like. And this is what Geshe Langri Tangpa is saying in this verse, that by seeing all phenomena as illusory, as dreamlike, there's no point in having attachment to them. They are the magical emanations produced by our karma. If we produce good karma, yes, things will be fine, people will be kind to us, people will think we were great, we're super, and so on. As soon as we start to make some mistakes, if these are ordinary beings, at least, which most of us are, people will think we're crap, they will criticize us, they will shun us, and so on and so on. So, the same people that loved us will turn their back on us, and so on. So it's all very illusory. It's, because we created some karma for it. We created the karmic causes for it. We see, this is how I understand it, that the appearances, we actually see that the appearances we have are the results of our mind, and there's no point in being attached to the beautiful appearances and averse to the, let's say, unpleasant appearances, just like in a dream. Yeah? You can appreciate the dream, but we don't take it, we don't, I don't know if taking it too seriously is the right expression, because we don't get attached to dreams, I think. When we see dreams as dreams, we don't get attached. And we know that there will just be new dream appearances, so on. So training our minds, even as somebody who has not realized emptiness, training ourselves to see things, ourselves, our body, everything that we experience as dream-like, as illusory-like, as hallucination-like, or as dewdrops, very impermanent, as flashes of lightning, very impermanent. Then we release our attachments and our aversions. Our mind can practice Dharma freely without worldly concerns, and we continuously should be creating causes for liberation and for complete enlightenment. So this is how I understand this last verse of Langri Tangpa. Train yourself right now to see things as illusory, as the product of your mind. When you actually have trained your mind enough to have a direct realization of emptiness, this is called, absorption is called space-like emptiness, because no conventional phenomena appear at that time. When you arise from the meditative equipoise, this is called the illusory experience of illusory-like emptiness. And here you see in a very non-artificial way, without having to think about it, that things are illusory, dreamlike, and so on. There will be no grasping and no attachment. You will still even more be engaged with the welfare of other sentient beings, with love, with compassion. So there's no indifference and no depression there, but it's just not, falling into any samsaric traps in your Dharma practice. Okay. That's it. That rounds up the 8 verses of
yeah. I don't want to take any time. I know we're finishing. I'm just saying that the last verse, I think it's the most important. It needs to be the first verse, because if we take everything as illusory, everything will be, we could do all the others.
Yes.
Right? It's the most important.
Yes, but it's the most difficult to explain. So, well, for somebody who doesn't have so much understanding of emptiness. But yes, I think you're right. If you understand that, then the others practices become much more easy. And at some other point, of course, you continue with your investigations about reality. See if this topic of emptiness makes sense, and you study it more and more, and contemplate it. And maybe in the future we can have discussion on it. This topic, more discussion.
Thank you.
Any other topic, comment, question?
I just want to remind everybody that at 4 we're having a puja. Lama Chopa, Ayelet, Nomi, you're invited.
I
Juan
can't
and Lynn.
attend. We're having guests. I have to, yeah. We have guests at
Well, we're
4:30.
going to have guests too.
Yeah, yeah. I'll invite all the Buddhas.
Okay, so maybe I see some of you 4 o'clock. If not, it's no problem. And thank you so much for attending these talks and for paying so much attention and for wanting to use the Dharma to transform your mind and for whatever good you do in your daily life. That's so precious. We can dedicate the merit with verses for increasing bodhicitta and wisdom realizing emptiness.
Which page?
I'm not sure actually. There we have
This
it.
one?
Yeah. Jasho Sesho Rinpoche Makye Panan Kigishi Gewa Nyampa Mepai Kone Kundu Pawashu Tani Tawa Rinpoche Makye Panan Kigishi Gewa Nyampa Mepai Kone Kundu Pawashu. Can say, may the precious view, samsara nirvana, like even an atom of inherent existence, and cause and effect, independent arising or unbetraying. I seek a blessing to discern the meaning of Nagarjuna's thought that these two are mutually complementary and not contradictory. And we can go down to the verse for long life of His Holiness. In a land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all-powerful Chinrezig Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends. And finally, please the verse for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And we change the last line, which says, please return, please live long, to please return quickly. You upheld the subduers more way, who served as the bountiful bear of all, sustaining, preserving, spreading Majana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, please return quickly into this world to benefit sentient beings. Okay.